Lara al-Qasam is a Palestinian-American college student who arrived at Israel's Ben-Gurion airport 6 days ago to begin a year of study at Jerusalem's Hebrew University. Since then, she's been detained at the airport under the Netanyahu government's policy of barring foreign supporters of BDS, the movement to boycott, divest from, and sanction Israel over its policies towards the Palestinians. Strategic Affairs Minister Gilad Erdan said today she must explicitly renounce BDS to gain entry.
And over that, hundreds of academics in Israel and abroad have signed petitions denouncing al-Qasam's detention. An Israeli court will hear an appeal for her case next Sunday. Joining us from London is writer and activist Hen Mazzig, and from New York, Peace Ariel Gold, national co-director of CODEPINK Women for Peace, who was barred from entering Israel 3 months ago over her support of BDS. Hen, I want to start with you as somebody who has supported this campaign, who has helped get it started, the campaign to bar her from entering Israel. Lay out for us why you think that preventing her from entering Israel, from actually seeing the realities here, is a helpful thing for the country.
Just to correct, I did not start a campaign. I just shared my own personal story with personal experience with Lara al-Qasam when she worked, or her organization worked, to boycott my event at University of Florida. You know, I got here to London yesterday to be on a delegation and speaking on college campuses. And as I was walking through Heathrow, I started thinking, what will happen if I'll tell the police officer in the booth when you walk in? What will happen if I'll tell him that I'm supporting boycotting the UK and destroying the country and bringing it and changing it, because I don't think that UK, the United Kingdom, should exist? Would they let me in? And I think that's the answer. The answer is that these are activists. There was 20 that were barred so far that do not support the existence of a Jewish state, that are advocating against it, that have been humiliating speakers like myself, attacking us, and this idea to portray them as poor students, poor innocent people that just try to come to Israel to do something that is not supporting BDS is, I think it's ludicrous, and they should be barred, because there's no room. Any country, as a sovereign country, has the right to decide who will go in through the gates and who won't.
Ariel, I want you to give you a chance to respond to two of Hen's points. One, that Israel is doing a policy that is pursued by many other Western democratic nations, and the other, that activists like her have worked to, in a sense, have him boycotted from speaking on campuses in the U.S.
Well, I want to say that I think we're asking the wrong questions here. I think what we should be asking is why a country that calls itself a Western-style democracy is employing thought police. What is Israel so afraid of the world seeing, aside from the largest open-air prison on earth and over 50-year-long occupation? And absolutely, you know, we're just watching right now the country of Saudi Arabia possibly, or most likely, having murdered somebody, a columnist, for speaking out against the government. Is that what we want to follow in Israel?
Ariel, do you think that that's a fair comparison, particularly given the reputation that both Hamas in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority have for how they treat journalists?
I don't think the question right here is to talk about Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. We're talking about Israel.
Is it a fair comparison, though? We're talking about a journalist
status in the U.S. and has employed this tactic of repression. Right now, the only people who are welcome in Israel are either those who agree with Netanyahu's government or who are willing to stay silent about it.
All right, so let me get Hen's response.
The world is beginning to see that Israel is not a democracy that values free speech.
So let me get Hen's response to your question, essentially. Israel touts itself as the only true democracy in the Middle East. Why not let those activists who don't believe it in to see it with their own eyes?
I would have addressed Ariel, but I think the claims that she's making are just insane. So I can't even, I mean, on the one hand, she's comparing between Israel to Saudi Arabia, and then she tells you, don't compare between Israel to Hamas. And then she tells, I mean, that's the mentality. That's the type of people that we're talking about. It's people that have no connection to reality, saying that there's thought police. What type of thought police are you talking about? There's people that visited Lara al-Qasam, that supported her, that are standing with her. There's people that are calling for, you know, that are criticizing the Israeli government. We're not talking about Israelis. We're talking about foreign.
I want to repeat the question because it's a really fundamental one. Why not let those activists in to see with their own eyes the Western democracy that you describe?
Because people that are so fanatic in their activism, like Ariel Gold, that was arrested about 4 times, that leads one of the worst anti-Semitic organizations in the U.S., CODEPINK and JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace. People like her will come to Israel and they won't change her mind. Give you an example. Take Simon Zimmerman, the head of, if not now, an organization that supports the boycott of Israel. She made Aliyah. She came to Israel. She got a citizenship, and she still works to advocate against the country online. Activists like her are bad news for us, and I think we're just talking about people that are advocating for a boycott, not people that criticizing the government. You know, we have a vibrant democracy. There's Israeli parties from from left to right that are criticizing the government. It's not about that. It's about people that advocate for the destruction of the Jewish state, and maybe that's a question for Ariel. Does she support Israel's existence as a Jewish state?
Well, I want to ask Ariel another question. First of all, you can respond to that, Ariel, but I want to ask you, there are professors in the U.S. that have been refusing to write letters of recommendation for students that want to study in Israel, just like Lara does, because of their support of BDS. Is that action justified while you're advocating, saying, let Lara in to come study in Israel?
Professors have the right to decide who they do and do not write recommendations for. That's part of the academic process here in the United States. And let's talk about what boycott, divestment, and sanctions is. These are a set of tactics, first of all. Many of the campaigns that have been run for BDS target things like settlements, which are entirely illegal under international law. This is a set of tactics that are entirely nonviolent. They follow in such traditions as the Montgomery bus boycott here in the U.S. and the lettuce workers boycott. They're a set of tactics to influence policy.
Well, Hen, let me let you respond to that. Ariel's making the point at the end, at the bottom line, these are non-violent tactics. You may disagree with them, but they are non-violent tactics. So under the rules of the game, is it wrong for Israel to allow these people to entry into Israel?
Do you think, I mean, does any of us think that Israel actually would want to not allow people to go into the country? Of course not. It's an act that has come of, it's a desperate act. We are seeing that Israel is being attacked by people all over the world. I've been attacked personally so many times. I mean, just in last year, 300 students tried to shut me down. Professors that are shouting in my talks. It's people that they can call themselves nonviolent, but it is violent. I mean, the idea that you will not write recommendation letters to Jewish students, we just heard yesterday that in Michigan, a professor is comparing between Bibi to Hitler, saying that it's genocide as well. I mean, the type of conversation is not one that is about peace. And that's why Ariel is also avoiding the question if she supports the existence of a Jewish state. That's why activists of the BDS movement will never answer it. They will deflect as she did. Again, the idea that people like her will be greeted into Israel with open arms. No, it's not the case. It's not going to happen. And just like any other country, that's the fundamental issue. Just like any other country, we should not allow people that are advocating for the destruction of our country to go into our country. It's our decision at the end.
So before we let you both go, I want to let Ariel get another chance to speak again. And to answer that question directly, do you support Israel's right to exist? And how big of a part do you think that key issue is really inside the BDS movement?
Let's look at what Israel is doing right now as a country and decide if we support that.
I'm asking
Israel
if you support it.
continues to maintain a military occupation, a siege on Gaza. Around 200 people have been killed in Gaza since March 30th. These are the qualities that we have to decide whether we support or not. And if we do not support them, then we need to take nonviolent actions as citizens of America, as American Jews, myself, and as citizens of this world to change those policies.
So where do you stand on it? Do you support Israel's right to exist? That's the question.
I think that's a ridiculous question. We all know that Israel does exist as a country.
That's not the question.
It exists in terms
of
UN
it should be easy to answer.
Special status from the U.S. this is an absurd question. Israel does exist. The question is whether Palestinians have human rights or not.
All right, Hen, final word.
You got your answer. I mean, the only thing that is ridiculous here is that this facade that Ariel and activists like her, Lara al-Qasam, are trying to pretend that they are all about the occupation or about settlements, that they are all about criticism of Israel. It's not that. It's activists that have one goal, that are fanatic in their goal. You know, like her, like Simon Zimmerman. The whole idea is to destroy the Jewish state and to bring an end to its existence as a Jewish state. So we should not allow them in. Democracies need to protect themselves, especially from fanatic, rabid anti-Semites like Ariel and
All right,
Lara
well,
al-Qasam.
this is a small taste of just why this debate is so heated and seems to be stuck at this point.